was Hi Ren from the artist Ren, who is probably the best artist that I have discovered in the last 5-10 years or so. Recommend you check out that full video. I'll link to it in the comments below. It's actually the kind of video that my conversation partner Bret Nicholson would have reviewed for his YouTube channel. So he has a lot of YouTube videos around reacting to things that his millennial and Gen Z staff sort of show to him. And it's fun, it's great, check them out. I'll link to them as well. But he's not just sort of a YouTube pastor, like the name of his whole channel is A Pastor Reacts. He is a friend of mine. We live in the same community. When I do attend church, or when I have attended church for the last decade or so, it tends to be his. And we've struck up a friendship and spend a lot of time together, drinking coffee, talking about music, talking about movies, podcast media, and matters of faith from time to time. And a couple weeks ago on Leap Day, I put a post out on Facebook that caught his attention. And he sought me out and wanted to catch up. And we were going to meet here, my back porch. And unfortunately, the day that we had it scheduled, it rained. And so last minute, we decided maybe we should have that conversation at one of my coffee shops. And then after taking a beat or two, I was like, hey, you've got a YouTube channel. I've got a YouTube channel. Why don't we record this thing? So we did. And here's what happened. This is A Pastor Reacts to Zach. The thing that Zach has needed to have happen. It's like, you're going to talk to this guy. Right. And she does, I think I've told you before, she doesn't really talk like that. She's not a real woo-woo spiritual person. With the exception of when she walked into what is now the original honeymoon location. And she walked in and she's like, I'm going to own this place someday.
Oh, okay.
So she's got a good track record.
Okay.
So she's like,
so
you're going to talk.
Very seldom, but when it's...
Yes. So she's like, you're gonna talk to this guy. I was like, babe, he's, to me at least, he's kind of.
She was saying it as predictive, not like instructive. Like, you're gonna talk to him now. Call him right now.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
It's like, no. Like, this will happen. I was like, I don't know, babe.
Okay.
And then I think it was like the next day, Jordan tweeted something. So this is Jordan Hall, not Jordan Peterson.
Right.
So we are on our way to go see Jordan Peterson, like, as my Valentine's Day present in St. Louis. And when I say we're driving together. I'm going to leave her in the nice hotel while I go to Jordan Peterson by myself. That was her Valentine's Day gift to me, was you get to see Jordan Peterson by yourself, and I get to have a hotel night without the stress of the business.
Hey, I'm a little jealous. That's a good setup.
Yeah, it worked out really nicely. So the next day, I tweet him, Jordan Hall,
right, and
said, I'd love to talk to you about your calling. Because he talked in a couple of these podcast interviews about feeling called. And he said, yeah, sounds great. I'll trade you for a bag of coffee. And I was like, all right, Jessica, the prophetess, strikes again.
There it happens. Right.
And so he's actually a bit of a coffee connoisseur.
Okay.
And was received it and it landed like the same day we were scheduled to talk. And I was like, I'm actually I had started this YouTube project and I kind of felt a calling towards it. I don't really understand it, but are you okay if we record it? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. So we did. And now that's the Call Me Jordan video on my channel.
Excellent. But before that, you didn't have any meaningful contact with them?
Not contact,
right, okay.
But it was all projection. Again, this is the project part of Zach Parsons Projects. So he's having this broadcast experience on YouTube. He's putting stuff out, tens of thousands of people watching different bits of content that he's put out over the years.
Okay.
People becoming aware of, okay, what makes me afraid? And how does my fear make it easy for me to be led and manipulated? What does it look like when somebody who I trusted is telling me falsehood? How do I actually begin to notice that things like credentials aren't actually a functional proxy for competence or good faith? How do I navigate a world where I can't trust any institutions?
I mean, just prolific writing, videos, public speaking, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
so it's all one way. I'm receiving it. So I had not reached out to him, but I had plenty of my projected understanding of his framework, worldview, approach.
Oh, okay, I got you. Wow, it was gracious of him to
absolutely
open the door.
Absolutely,
that's fantastic.
So he felt from me in my request a good faith. He's like, this guy actually wants to talk to me about something that is recently meaningful for me,
right.
Jordan. And he likes coffee, so I was like, talking about Dancing with Wolves, it's a good trade.
It very much so. Absolutely.
So that just sort of kind of turned some things upside down. That same day, Valentine's Day, was the first day of Lent, which in our tradition, like, I don't remember Lent ever being like a big deal, like growing up in our churches. But it's something I've been exposed to and been, I see people respond very positively and meaningfully to it. I've experienced Ash Wednesday one time. Yeah. And I saw something else, again, Twitter, YouTube, this guy, Pete Rollins, talking about things you could give up for Lent. He said, well, why don't we give up atheism for Lent?
Hello there. I just wanted to take a moment of your time to tell you about Atheism for Lent, which is coming up again in February of 2024. Now, this is a course that I've been running for decades now.
Or if you are a
believer, that one, that's pretty clever.
Yeah. Or if you're a believer, give up Christianity for Lent and be an atheist for Lent. Give up God. Like,
okay, I haven't heard that one either.
Okay,
right.
He's a little bit of an extreme guy.
Yeah, it sounds like Okay.
So in my case, it was like, okay. And I've softened. It's like I went from atheist to agnostic to like humanist. Like I kind of like I've worn the humanist label pretty comfortably for a while, but it was I'm not praying. I'm very sporadically going to church, sometimes kicking and screaming. And I was like, hey,
kicking and screaming.
Is Bret preaching today? Oh wait, Bret's preaching. Okay.
Okay.
You get me there more often than not. You don't know.
Really? Okay. Yeah, sure.
In fact, last week I was like, babe, I'm ready. Let's go to church. And she's like, I'm not doing that. And I'm like, okay, let me get.
I'm not gonna pry, but
I'll tell you our because we're gonna have an honest conversation.
Real long ago.
What's that?
I remember seeing her out there.
Yeah. She goes all the time.
Yeah.
But and she wishes that I would go. And so here's the day. I'm like, all right, babe, I'm in. I'm ready to do it. I'm feeling good. I've had a Sunday morning online book club like since the pandemic that continued into the pandemic, and that's sometimes been a schedule conflict.
Right.
We wrapped it this past Sunday. We said this is the end. We finished a book.
Even after that long, I mean.
And it was great. I mean, and we related. We connected. Tears were shed. Like relationships, bonds were formed without flesh to flesh.
Wow. Okay.
Gathering. So I'm like, hey, let's go. And she's not feeling it. So then I say, okay, hold on. Before you really say no, there's the no, and then there's the definitely no. Let me check One Life's live stream, the 9 o'clock live stream. Then I can see if Bret's preaching. And then you'll be even more. And so I put up, I'm like, Bret's preaching. And she's like, not doing that.
Still not doing it.
Yeah. She was just having a bad day. She did at the end of the day say that she. But stretch it out a little bit. Make her feel it. She's never gonna watch this. Like it's okay.
It's like my wife. Never seen any of my videos.
Exactly.
Okay.
But she did. She felt. She in hindsight, she's like, yeah, I should have gone. I should have done that. Yeah. So I'm sorry. You might be able to tell. Like I'm on some sort of high, whether it's a spiritual high or a caffeine high or something else. I'm hoping that you can sort of help me to kind of.
Well, we'll go back. I think we need to go back for my sake anyway to the Lent thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was sort of the turnabout thing. It's on Valentine's Day. You get Peterson stuff. You're give up atheism for Lent. Give up Christianity for Lent, which is like So
I say a Lent, and I've got like a group of men that we've been kind of keeping fellowship together and on text thread stuff, and I'm like. It's Tuesday night, Fat Tuesday, or whatever, Mardi Gras, and had a couple drinks by the fire, and I think I'm smoking a cigar. Like I'm like, I don't really like party. Like that's the extent of like a party to me,
Okay.
And I was like, all right, guys, I'm doing the Fat Tuesday thing, and tomorrow, this is what I'm going to give up atheism for Lent. And a couple of them were like, yeah, I'm feeling called to do something too. And so I made some sort
Did
of
any of them say, I'm going to give up Christianity for Lent?
In a way, yes. or
you don't have to divulge.
Yeah. You know some of these guys. So we'll let them keep their secrets.
Okay, that's fine.
But so then what happens? So back to the part of the story where Jordan and I are talking. So we end up having. So I've got to try and catch up the sort of relational asymmetry between him and me, and it would never happen. I mean, I've literally consumed hours and hours and hours, and that's not even necessarily him disclosing himself to me, but he's disclosed so much about himself. So then I spend a good 10, 15 minutes kind of telling him through my story and share some vulnerable things, and we sort of sink, deeper into like a real conversation. So much so that by the end of it, he asks me to pray. Even though knowing that I don't identify as a Christian and I don't pray, I'm just feeling something, okay?
Right.
And he didn't know that I had given up atheism for Lent. But if I had, then that would mean that I would pray. And so I did.
Okay.
And it was right there. I'm pointing at this, not the screen, but the desk behind the screen. And like I felt something. And it wasn't a prayer that was like focused on me. Like, God, let me hear your voice. That tends to be my prayer.
Right.
It was towards someone else. Phil Heller was telling me that there's a name for this that I've unfortunately forgotten. What's that kind of prayer when you're praying for someone else? Intercession. Oh, okay. That's what it was.
Yeah. Okay.
So I prayed for this person, and then felt someone else immediately coming to mind as I was praying. And it's someone who Jordan and I both mutually know. And I messaged him. I was like, I did it, and something happened. And this guy came in, and he's like, yeah, you're right. We need to pray for him as well. So now I'm like praying for people all through Lent. And
really?
And,
okay.
And it's,
wow.
When I was praying for myself, I was still focused on myself, and I was as good or crappy as I could be. Yeah. And now this season has like yielded some weird things that I struggle to just attribute to myself once I started praying for other people.
Okay.
So I know that you have a lot of experience. Weird in a good way. No, yeah, weird in a good, like weird in those sort of spooky things where it's like, how could I have known that? I know I couldn't have known. Like today, you got to calm me down. I'm like way too. I want to hey, come talk to me. Come talk to me.
I'm certainly not going to be the person that calmed him down.
Who's got a bucket of water?
He was on one of those highs, and then he talked to Bret, and then he's back down on the turf.
I'm peeing this morning.
Okay. All right.
You got a picture? All right. So I'm peeing this, and all of a sudden I just feel like I need to text so and so. There's a couple other things that happened that I'll tell you another day. But that one thing happened, second thing happened, and then this person's face popped in my mind. And so I went and grabbed my phone and texted and said, oh my gosh, you're on my heart. How are you? It's so amazing that you texted. Of course I'm on your heart. Today's my birthday. I haven't talked to this person in over a year. I don't know when their birthday is.
Yeah. Wow, okay.
What is that?
Yeah.
It might be nothing. It might be a coincidence.
Yeah.
That stuff like that.
Yeah, and through the years, I've had several.
I know. Yes.
And people do, and people have, and
how do you take those? Like, is anything coming to mind right now of something to where it happened, and you had a very strong suspicion, almost to certainty, that it was God?
Very strong suspicion, almost a certainty that it was God. I know I have, because as you ask it that way, but I'm trying to grab the specific because all these things are starting to float across my head.
Let me project one onto you then, because I have a memory of a podcast that you had done about miracles on the church podcast. A woman who had traveled to Africa and explained some miracles that may have happened. I don't know if you were a part of them or you were hearing about them.
No, I was hearing about them. I was looking for my own personal experience, but that was
Yeah.
a case where, I had studied, there's a book called The Case for Miracles. And there's another one written by a scholar named Craig Keener that's kind of a very, very exhaustive research into that. And he names an IU study that was done of miracles in this place in Africa, specifically this missionary team, and they're specialists in a lot of blind eye see and all this sort of stuff. So I incorporated it into a sermon, and one of the people
Physical
in my
healing.
church, physical.
This is
said,
I texted you on your birthday.
I got a friend of mine in my church.
See,
He comes to me and says, "I know exactly what you're talking about. I went there. I was there at that." She went on a student mission trip when she was just out of high school, and went to that very place that they studied and that's incorporated in this book. And she said, "I was a part of a prayer team that got around this woman. She had the whites in her eyes only and couldn't see her or any of the rest. And they put their hands on her, and she watched." She said, "I watched someone's eyes fill in and be able to see." So I saw it with my own eyes. Wow. And it was that kind of thing. And this, I liked it because it was already kind of confirmed by this group of scholars from IU went and studied it and did a whole
shout out to the 812.
So that was kind of cool, but that wasn't like a "I'm thinking of you" text. I mean, I remember recently I reached out to someone, and sometimes people will say, like, I'll say, "Hey, I was praying this morning, you came to my mind," and I'll just say that, and they'll say things like, "Well, you have no idea how important that was or how meaningful that was at this moment. I really needed it." Now they don't elaborate. And sometimes maybe it's just a general, "Hey, it's nice to know somebody out there is thinking of me," or whatever else. Or sometimes it can be very specific. Like, man, I really, my mother, she was widowed last summer, and she's kind of going through what you go through. And there was one morning, kind of goes like this. And there was one morning she woke up and she was just in darkness, just grieving, just as bad as, kind of at one of those true bottoms with the whole thing, and just laying there in bed. And her phone starts ringing. And she picks it up, and it's a neighbor that she's met a few times from down the street, who says, "Judy, are you okay?" And she's like, "Well, if I'm being really, really honest, I'm not okay." And she said, "Okay, well, I called to let you know that I'm thinking of you and praying for you, because I just felt like the Lord told me to get a hold of you just now." And she said, I was going to text you, and I felt like, no, it was supposed to be a phone call." and she just said that. I mean, and this is a story from 6 weeks ago, probably, just one of her neighbors, again, she was acquainted with and met and chatted with a few times. But the lady got a hold of her, and at that moment, and for my mom, of course, it was like this rescue thing that happened. Sure. So yeah, I've seen
that was
countless of those kinds of things. It's and obviously from my worldview, I chalk it up to the Holy Spirit leading people. But that's a thing. But that's not uncommon at all, really, in my experience.
So the idea of a call and a response. I don't know how many people know your story. Maybe I can redirect them to some spots where you've, shared more of your story. Right. And so, all right, so this is Bret. I don't know how long we've been going here, but so Bret Nicholson is pastor at One Life Church in Evansville, Indiana.
It has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end coming. And the call and the invitation to every single person in the world coming from Jesus is to don't tell your own story, submit yourself to the King whose story the whole thing is, okay? Because all of us, we want to be king or queen of our own story.
And we've known each other probably about 8, 9, 10 years now.
Yeah, going on that.
So we went to, I think we really bonded going to a conference together where we were carpooling with a group of about a dozen people, and you drew the short straw, or I drew the short straw, or I got lucky, and we got to bond over a road trip down there. And
including you turned me on a
Jack in the Box.
Jack in the Box, that's right.
You take those cheap tacos and you dip them into that ranch.
It is. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was great, guys.
But obviously we had just a very alive, conversation, and you've heard and experienced, some of my faith journey over the years, and it's just turned into a thing where we can kind of talk about anything, and there's not that type of. I know that you would love for me to, come to Christ or something like that's sort of understood, but it's not there's no pressure. Right. There's no how are you with your walk with Jesus today kind of thing. We may spend an hour talking about the Beatles.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you are also, I'm going to project and you can redirect. You have felt in recent years a calling to sort of have a YouTube channel.
Sam Harris destroys the Bible and the Quran in 5 minutes. Now, although that sounded like a stretch, I did take the bait. I had to see this.
A bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
So tell me about how that calling came about.
Oh, the YouTube channel thing. We had it since the beginning, or near the beginning. I think we got it in 2014. It's One Life Network is the channel. But we just put it on there in my view, it was sort of like the same as having a Facebook and having all the things. Mm-hmm. We put services on there. It actually came through. We hired a young guy, and he was literally young. He's the age of my son. So I got this guy on my staff, and he's like, you gotta get on. You gotta do YouTube. You gotta do it right. You gotta do it well. You gotta do it the way YouTube is supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And he just kind of planted that seed, and he was real excited about it and had the capabilities in it. So it got me intrigued by it. But the real pivot point moment was we had a guy come in who was named Cameron Bertuzzi, and he has a YouTube channel. I'm losing the name of it off the top of my head. But he does interviews with prominent scholars and all this kind of stuff. And we had him come in, and we have relationships, connections with him. And he came in, and we tried to get people to come on a Friday night to hear him speak. Now, we made our staff be there. So that was 12, 13, 14 people and their families. And maybe 4 other people came in on top of this. And so we're inside our auditorium. I was humiliated. I was like, Cameron, I'm so sorry. We really did try to get people here and all this kind of stuff. He spoke on a Sunday morning, that was fine. But
he's not from around here, though.
No, he's from out of Texas.
Yeah.
No one knew
who he has an audience.
We tried to, they didn't trust me on that it would be worth their time. It's like, you really need to do this, come to this Friday night thing. So he speaks.
Good thing you recorded it.
We can seat 400 to 600 people in this room, and he's talking to 14 people. But he asked if we could go ahead and shoot it on our gear, and we got nice cameras in there and all that because we broadcast. And so we did. He posted it, and the next day he had 4,000 views on the thing.
Change the subject from these conversations and steer them more to something that, trying to share the gospel with people.
So I guess my thought on that is that I would prefer to let those types of conversations happen organically. And I'm just going to relate it back to conversations with my brother when I first, because this isn't the whole story. This first conversation that I had with my brother, that's not the whole story of our relationship and how this has developed. But
okay, wait just a second here. I'm going to do the math here. So some of it, the sense of calling to go on YouTube, was truly just the scale. Mm-hmm. It was like we couldn't beg people we probably, if we'd offered to pay him or feed him a meal or something, would have done. Yeah, he had 4,000 views within the first day. I think it's probably that same talk is probably up to 10 or whatever else. And I've seen that kind of pattern since then where, and I had a friend of mine who used to travel all over the country and speak at churches and stuff. And he'd say,
is this Billy Graham?
150 people here. Close, very close. Baptist evangelist. Okay. But he said, I'd speak at churches and it'd be, and I'd travel out of town and be away from my family and speak to maybe 150, 200 people. And he said, I could sit in my living room and literally have 5,000 people that I'm talking to right there. And so some of it was just the good old fashioned raw practicality of it. But that experience with Cameron was sort of the one I was like, okay, we're just going to get into this because it's where the conversation happens. Once I stepped in, the thing that I've been the most impressed about YouTube that I love, with all the problems in the modern world, conversations like this are had and watched by people, and people are interested, and people comment, and people interact with it. And I don't remember that. You think about that pre-social media, you wouldn't get a atheist Christian debate or even a discussion on free will versus predestination unless you were on a college campus. No one cared. Sure. But now you have those conversations all the time with very intelligent people, and the good ones are really good discussions. Yeah. And that to me is why I want to be in there. I I want to be at that table having those conversations on the scale, and the scale helps. It's not just, oh, my mother's, watching. It's you don't know who's. And we've checked our geographic stuff and all that. We've had people in New Zealand and people in Sweden, and it's a blast. It's a lot of fun.
Has it changed the? Let me ask it this way. So the church is led by elders, right? You have an elder-led church, and so even though you're sort of the paid vocational head of the church, you don't get to call all the shots.
Right. It's kind of like a board of directors to an executive director for a nonprofit kind of setup.
How have they responded to this? And there's data presumably, and stories of impact. Like, it seems to be growing and something that continues to resonate. How have they experienced it?
No, they did great, because once I kind of had that mental shift, I could name off 15 reasons why we ought to do this, and I could make it 30 reasons. I have a no turning back attitude about it. To me, it's commonsensical to the point of just being so obvious that I don't know why people would not do it for lots and lots of reasons. And so that was, I made a formal presentation at Bullet Point and say, this is why I think it's not just we have a channel, but it was July of 2022. We just said, no, we're going to go into the YouTube context in the same way you would go into the context of Peru or another country. Yeah, exactly. Yep. And operate the way you operate there and make that effort. And so that's been the big difference for us, has been, and it's fun being coached by this guy in his early 20s, and I feel like he's leading me around by the hand. Okay, now come on, and I'm trying to understand if I have any appeal at all. What's my angle? There's this older pastor guy.
Well, do you know Paul Vanderklay or know of Paul Vanderklay?
I feel like I know the name.
Okay, you may know it just from some of the stuff that I've been putting out here lately. So I'm excited for you to find out who he is and meet him someday.
Where's he out of?
Sacramento.
Got a beard?
He does have a beard.
Beard.
Yeah.
Calvinist guy?
Yes.
Kind of mellow Calvinist guy.
Yes.
Hi, this is Paul. If you're watching this, it means you have found my YouTube channel.
Okay, I know what you're talking about.
He's watching this right now, laughing his ass off. Okay, yes. Okay, so you do know who.
Well, the mellow Calvinist guys stand out. Because there's like 3 of them.
Well, and he can be not so mellow too.
Right.
Shouldn't the church be a place where that person can walk in and say, I think Jesus is an asshole. Look how he talked to this foreign woman. I want a church where people can walk in there and lay that on the table.
And so he's sort of known. So when I got into the whole rebel wisdom space, that was sort of like through Jordan Peterson. Right. Paul also really fell in hard with Jordan Peterson. And when he would go to church, he would try and talk with people at his church about Jordan Peterson. They just didn't care. And he's been a pastor for decades. But the whole Jordan Peterson and making the Bible more accessible and interesting to like a whole new generations of people was a very alive conversation that he wanted to have.
Yeah.
So he started hosting and he sort of co-birthed this project he calls Estuary.
John Van Donk has been working pretty hard on developing the estuary concept. He's been leading 3 different estuary leader groups, and they have developed what I called, without John's permission, the estuary protocol. And
so that whole idea of like saltwater and freshwater mixing.
Yeah.
And he's very clear that it's not a church, but it's something that he actually hosts now at his church, and it's hosted sort of church adjacent at places all over the country, and it's where you can have sort of a real raw conversation.
Now it's all coming back to me, because I saw him I think I began about 3 or 4 months ago, and he kind of mentioned that concept, and I wanted to steal it, and I'm glad and I kind of forgot
you are going to steal it, I think.
Why not? Is Jessica said I'm going to steal it?
She's the one who's got the better track record. Okay, so I'm saying you're going to steal it.
Okay,
we'll see what happens.
All right.
Okay, so now I'm going to tell you about what I saw when I was peeing.
Right. I forgot about that. It was cycle through.
I saw us starting an estuary at One Life East.
Really?
Really. That's what I saw.
So this could be.
Then I saw it happening at City Church in downtown Evansville.
Yeah.
And then the person who came into mind, I'll just call him out. I can edit this later if I choose to. Rankin. It doesn't matter if you know him or not, because that was the person whose birthday it was today. And he helped facilitate and birth that one.
Wow.
I'm talking about these things in past tense like they've already happened.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. Well, hey, that's that's how you're supposed to do it.
But that's what I experienced. It was in that order.
Exactly.
It was like I was on the stage with you at One Night Feast, and then Rankin was on the stage at City Church downtown.
Okay.
And I was like, you need to text him right now. And so I did.
Wow. Okay. Excellent. Yeah, that's
so Paul Vanderklay. So the estuary thing is one thing, right? That's an in-person experience where people go and they're sharing their real lives. But he's also has a similar calling of you of being this, having this pastoral spirit towards YouTube and YouTube content and the relationships that he's formed and sees developing, and kind of helps to like shepherd, you know, from his perch in Sacramento, he has a flock around the world, and he doesn't like, and that's not what he's trying to cultivate, but it's like, and he would tell them like, go to a local church in your community, and if that's too far, then go to an estuary, and if you don't have an estuary, create one.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. I'm glad we had this conversation. I got a whole new.
we got work to do, right?
We do. And can we pause?
Yep.
I'm going to be.
Let's pause.
Remember
I brought up peeing too much.
Yeah, well, it could even happen again before I leave.
I'm not sure what's happening, but I feel like we got into it, like we dropped in. On a steady dropped in. It definitely did record.
Okay.
However, it's not picking up our audio separately. It's picking it up over there. So that's okay.
What does that mean?
It still has, it just won't be as like, it'll maybe be a little more echoey. I might have to do a little like post-production work because it's the microphone's over there. So these are props.
Oh, they are.
They've turned into props, but I think we should still hold them just to keep up what we've started, like just visually.
Oh yeah, that's right. Wait a minute. Before that, they had.
Hey, it's a little bit better than it was before, and I'm glad that we recorded this, because we talked about not recording this because we haven't talked in.
That's very true.
In 3 months, 2 months.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah,
it has been a while, and I was inspired by, you posted something on Facebook that I thought, and I don't even look at Facebook all that much, and you had said something about the journey. But before I go there, okay, so you're gonna think I'm making this up, but I'm not. Speaking of little spiritual things. So November 1st, 2009, I'm gonna do the short form of this. I was working at another church, Bethel, here in town, and just had been very, very happy there, very satisfied, not planning on doing anything, but started feeling like that's not always going to be true. And it was a weird season, like, what's the matter with me? I feel directed somewhere else. And finally it got so bad that I remember I was sitting in a service and enjoying myself and all that, and I literally felt this inside prompt thing to, I have taken a nap after church every Sunday. I learned that from my dad. It's my religious practice. You know, I have done that every Sunday for my life. And I literally felt this prompt of, do not do that today. You go pray instead. And I was like, oh, seriously? Man, that's a big.
So anyway,
speaking of prayer, giving up something, this is hardcore. You know, this is a true sacrifice. So I went out by the river here in town and literally prayed. I said, Lord, I know you're stirring something in me, and I don't know exactly what it is, but I'd rather you be clear. I'd rather just clean toilets or whatever. It doesn't make any difference, but I just want to know what you want me to do, because I can tell something's different. And I had this picture. It was probably the most immediate guidance one I've ever had in my life. And
this is the discernment question that I asked you earlier.
Yeah, I was like, okay, there's like this flash in my mind, and there's a lot more there that I won't get into. But the one picture that I had that I've always been dissatisfied with is I pictured in my head tables where people were sitting, drinking coffee, talking about issues of faith, and having a place where you could go that if you knew if you struggled or whatever, you had doubts, or you could go there and you could have a conversation about it. It wasn't some kind of weird thing. And again, I literally had this fight. I could just see people sipping coffee and talking about these things. And that was the original intent behind One Life, beyond being a church or whatever else. Now, the dark side of that is, in some weird sense, I never feel like we got there. As simple as that sounds to do, why don't you just put tables and have people drink coffee? We have, but I've never, that was the essence of the thing that we set out to do. But then we started going multi-site, we do regular church stuff, and it never quite got there. So I don't know what you call it, estuary? I don't know exactly what the format is. I don't know exactly how they work. I remember him talking about that and going, that's it.
That's it.
So, and he somehow formalized it and got there. But that's that. I always go back to that. I can name the day because I've got the journal entry to prove it. I did the whole thing because it was very good. My wife and I had a discussion. We're like,
I love it.
Yeah. So when you say that, that's where my mind goes. It's like, wait a minute, it was 2009.
And when you're talking about the essence of it, and that you feel a sense of missing the mark, is that too strong?
No, sometimes I feel like I missed the planet. I mean, it was just like, because you get caught up. I mean, not that I don't think we were supposed to do a church or anything like that, but you get so caught up in the church thing and everything from marriages struggling to, kids ministry or whatever else. That concept, it gets backburnered a lot.
And that might be why Paul insists that it's not the church, because you may actually need those things of the church. And he brings in the whole paradise, walled garden, that the church has boundaries, and those boundaries are important, but they're not impermeable. Yeah. And this whole salt and fresh thing sort of going back and forth of an estuary in some ways has to be defended from the garden sometimes, because the garden wants to grow into it. And it's not about supporting the garden and nurturing the garden. The garden's going to be nurtured on its own. But this sort of liminal space between both can be overrun by too much church, let's say, or too much secular world, whatever is over here that's not church. And so maybe you had this sort of two-part calling that was get the church going, get the church rocking, do the children's ministry, do all the, grow the buildings, all those kinds of things. And that this other part, maybe I'm supposed to play that with you with this little coffee thing that's...
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's settled. It's done. We're doing it. You were here to see it, right? As fresh as it could possibly be. That's amazing. But because I'm glad he thought that through, because that is the exact challenge that you continually have. That we have done things. We've done special productions where we've tried to encourage conversations, and inspire conversations and things, just to get people thinking. And we've done things like that. We've got art shows. We've done that kind of stuff.
What's the one called that you do it quarterly or the project?
I wish we did it quarterly. It's more like every third year. And now we don't do them at all.
So awesome. I'll link to some...
The human brain. The center of human intelligence.
We did productions where we would tell our congregation, we would say, what we're going to do is we're going to imagine that we're doing a production, imagining that there's not any believers in the room at all. And we know there will be, but the way we're going to design it, and we're going to make the case for the faith through everything from talking to music to video to whatever else we can think of, and we'll pick a subject like the moral argument for the existence of God. I think the one you saw was called Project Mind, I think, because can Christian people be thinking people was the whole theme of the entire thing.
We got something like Doctor Strange. was like visuals from like Marvel movies and stuff, and it was
we put a lot of work into it, and so we did those. But that was kind of an example of trying to inspire the coffee conversation, just very elaborately, and it's never been very cost effective. So we don't do those like we used to.
I'll tell you something that I'm realizing right now in this conversation as we're having it, that has been a trait of mine, a tendency of mine, as I have tried to serve our community in the way that I felt like a calling towards our community of Evansville, especially in like matters of like faith and interfaith. I almost feel like a need or I want to protect the not church side of that equation. Like, to the extent that you want to create something, imagine there's no non-believers. Like, you could like come to me and be like, hey, as a non-believer, how does this land, kind of thing. And sometimes like for some of our interfaith stuff, I've been invited to be sort of the token non-Christian sort of person there. But I speak the language. It's like, have you seen Dune, the new Dune? I haven't. Okay. So
my wife read the books and loved them, but we haven't ventured into the movies yet.
Well, there's that character who's like, she's like a representative of the Empire, but she's got the blue eyes. Like she's sort of like become a Freeman, like speaks their language. Like she's been converted, but she can't say that she's been converted or something like that.
I am commanded to say nothing. To see nothing.
The Emperor sent us here to die.
I feel like sometimes that would be a role that I've been called to play. Of like, in fact, the For Evansville conversation was like, how should Christians better engage in the community in a way that comes across as love and not some sort of coercion?
Right.
So maybe that's like the roles that we are kind of called to play with this estuary project, is that you are going to protect the garden and I'm going to protect from the garden.
Ooh.
You know, and it's like if the sort of church focused thing didn't capture the essence, if the essence is like somewhere in the middle, I feel like that's a good call. I feel like that's a good calling for me to protect.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That makes sense. So in that sense now, as you're talking that, because I haven't heard the whole journey thing. Okay,
You're like, where are you?
Yeah.
It's still Lent season right now.
So. From Lent, you went from Lent, and then you're peeing, and there's so we're kind of this estuary thing's happening. So what?
Where am I right now?
Yeah, where are you at now? And it is still Lent.
So the sense that I got, the calling that I got on Leap Day, actually, of all things. So that'll be the 29th. So it's been 2 weeks.
So what a cool little holiday. I've never had that. You know, like special holiday markers.
And my birthday was in there at one point too. And so on Leap Day, I've been doing this journaling practice for a while, and like some days, you know, you just show up and it's crap. It's whatever. But you showed up. And then some days you go and it just flows out of you. That was a day when it just flowed out of me. By the end, I realized it was Leap Day, and I was like, I need to just do more than talk about, hey, I'm interested in church, more interested in God. I need to make a leap. And so my leap was turning around. So that is, as if I'm on a journey, if I've been on a journey away from God, like in the desert for the last, 12, 13 years,
right.
I'm turning around. Okay. Repentance, metanoia,
I was going to say, I don't know if you knew that was the word.
Yeah,
okay.
So just because I'm turning around doesn't mean I'm all the way back here and like there's a whole like mountain.
It has been a long walk that way.
It is not beaming, back to our So acknowledging that it's a journey,
right?
But also acknowledging what I'm pointed towards. And it is the faith of my roots. Let's point to this tree here. Like it's my roots. It's an understanding that when I say I project things and I see Jesus in things, like I am always going to see Jesus in things because that is what formed me. That is part of my spiritual formation.
Yeah.
And so if that leads me all the way back to a place I've already been to, that's great. If that leads me closer to it in this season, to where I'm still pointed. So you're pointed out this way towards people who are seekers. I'm pointed this way towards the church. Somewhere in the middle, we are facing each other, kind of like we're facing each other right now.
Yeah.
And it is a journey, and I'm pretty lousy at predicting the future, so I don't know.
Let's check in with Jess.
Yeah, my wife.
Where's he going to end up? How's this
right.
going to play out? Yeah.
So that's about as honest as I can be about sort of where I am. So if you needed me to like go through like the beliefs, that here's our statement of faith and all of that, and check all those boxes, I'm definitely not there yet.
Right. I got you.
But I'm facing something bigger than me that looks like God, that smells like Jesus, and that responds to prayers.
Okay. So do you feel a sense of like, I know in my own world years ago when I was younger and didn't want to do the God thing. It was a conscious, I could tell I was doing it. I could kind of consciously, hey, I'm going to build this little wall right here and let that be over here so I can do this over here. And I could tell when I took the wall down consciously. Mm-hmm. I knew that. I knew that was happening. It was in my attitude.
Brick by brick.
Different. So is that a fair metaphor for your own thing? Like, do you feel like it's been conscious and personal, or has it literally been like, just my head's up there?
No, it's there's a. So I got invited to the leadership summit thing, Craig Rochelle's thing.
More than 1/2 of the population won't trust someone or something until they see evidence. If this doesn't get your attention as a leader, you better sniff some smelling salt and wake up.
Yeah.
What's the name of that?
Are you talking like presently or
like last year? Like the most recent one.
The most recent one.
So
the only one I've missed.
Right before. Is it really?
I think it is. I've
okay.
Been to like 20.
I went. It's the only one I've been to.
Oh.
So I went in your stead. I've been invited several years, and so I went. And Craig Rochelle, who was actually like my pastor for a couple of years. I don't know if I ever told you that one.
So I got to remember that, like literally.
Yeah.
Oh, because it was in Phoenix.
Yes.
Yeah, where I love his story about Phoenix because they failed kind of miserably. It's fun to listen to him talk.
Yes, and I was there for the failure. I was part of the failure.
He was a part of the failure.
Probably the biggest reason for the failure. So, Greg, I apologize. But anyway, so he said something in his opening talk about people don't fear that they won't be enough for God or something like that. It was like that there will be so much that God can do with them. That is what holds them back. And I remember that like landing and being like,
wow, okay.
And that is where I sit right now, is because what preceded my deconversion or deconstruction, I call it deconversion, but I think deconstruction is kind of a better language. Like there were like pieces that fell apart. A big piece that fell apart was being unable to sort of discern and trust God's will over my own. And the big, breaking point in my journey was an affair that I had, right, which started out as an emotional affair. And it was even more, it was like an emotional / spiritual affair. Mm-hmm. It was like the thing that was alive wasn't just like, oh, we're sending poetry and love notes to each other or something. It was like we were talking about spiritual things that were alive to me at a higher and deeper level than it had in years. And so that aliveness, I trusted. And I was like, so God is leading me to leave my family and impact my kids' lives and like just create chaos for all the people around me. Flash forward a year later, that's bullshit. Yeah. That was me. That was me. Yeah. Like, that's what I wanted. So then it turned into, well, if I was praying and feeling that, where's God? Like, you're getting a phone call. Is it God?
Well, now that you bring it up, that is, you were asking about this. This is how it really works in my world, eh?
Yeah. So that was it. It was like, if I can't tell the difference between God's voice and my voice, maybe the reason for that is there was always only just one voice. Kind of like a reverse footsteps kind of thing. Like, God, where were you? You know? So it's like, if talking about superheroes, if I could ever have a superpower, what I've always asked for is being able to hear the voice of God. I think that would be the most powerful superpower. So where I'm at now is like, I am terrified to actually believe that there could be things that aren't just me. It's a lot more comfortable to think that I'm making this whole thing up, that I'm projecting things onto you, that I'm doing meaning making everywhere, but it's still all just sort of happening right in here, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then I'll die someday, and the other people will do their sort of meaning making.
Right.
It terrifies me to think that there could be something guiding that invites me into it to play a good role.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Well, I'm glad you said that it is, because some people might go, well, that's not terrifying. That's wonderful. No, it is very terrifying. And I hate to be the bringer of bad news, but I don't think that kind of terror ever completely leaves. Maybe it does for some superstars out there, but it doesn't in my own life. I don't think it does for anybody that's really, truly pursuing, because you expressed it well in the sense that in the end, and I knew, I used the wall metaphor, I knew on the other side of tearing down that wall that there really is someone controlling those dials that I didn't want him having access to. And if I'm going to say, because my big speech when I did my conversion, my repentance, it was like, Lord, I know for a fact I'm walking the other direction. I know I am. And I've tried before. I mean, it was kind of my own story. I've tried before to do this, and I'm just terrible at it. I'm terrible at doing it. But here's what I'm going to do. This is the last time I'm going to monkey around with it. I'm going, but I think of Jesus said, "He who puts his hands to the plow and looks back is not fit for service in the kingdom of God." It was like, okay, I'm going to put my hands on the plow, and all I've got is I'm not going to look back. I'm not letting go. But that. Wow. Jesus' words are follow me. Well, what does that mean? Well, follow the leader. When you played as a kid, it was like, if the leader does it, you do it. And then you go,
Simon
there's certain things he's doing I really don't want to do at all, because there's prior commitment. So that is a terrifying thing. It absolutely is. And that's where trust comes in and all that sort of stuff. But I'd be lying to say if I didn't really, truly sense that, well, the one, I was inspired with the one that had the coffee and all that, but still, I was gainfully employed at a church I loved and had health insurance and a nice house and all this. My wife and I literally talked about, we're willing to risk all that. Not that we're heroes, but there's sort of this thing of, sure, we've got to do this. But other things have made my stomach kind of shrink a little bit, or I really feel like I'm supposed to do it. I don't want to do it. So the terrifying thing, yeah.
Well, and that's why I like the conversation around calling, like just keeps coming back, because it's not a command. Maybe that's the wrong way to put it. It's like this thing that you have to respond to, and there's even like this metaphor of like a musical instrument. Hey, we are going to talk about music again. Of like, I see a trumpet. Like the trumpet sits there, and you don't play the trumpet. The wind blows through it.
Okay,
and so. How can you be an appropriate trumpet and not a trumpet player?
I need you to run that one by me again. How can you?
If my struggle is between doing what I feel is best and what I'm called to, and I have to discern that, so the spirit blowing through the instrument that is my life, your life, others' lives, as opposed to, no, I just want to do this.
Yeah.
I want to be selfish. I want to hang on to these things. I want to look back. I want to whatever. It's that discernment thing that I've already fallen off that side of the the cliff.
Yeah, I think in some sense, even if you get all the way back here, there's going to be a little bit of a battle that goes on. I think that's always.
I would kind of expect that.
Yeah. And that's the importance of scripture or teaching or interaction with other believers to kind of discern. Because the discernment doesn't always come from just kind of this inner voice that I'm hearing. It's a both and thing. It's a thing of the framework that of the worldview that is shaped by what Scripture says is important. And I can be pretty confident because my favorite way of reading the Bible anymore is I look for themes. I like to read big chunks, just like try to read the whole book of Romans at once instead of kind of really zooming in. I like to zoom in, but my favorite way is to read it in sweep. And I did this a lot in college. I would read whole letters and back to back. And what the good thing about that is you pick up on, this is what they talk about like kind of all the time. I mean, there's little things, but sometimes, but you hear throughout the New Testament, there are certain big block things that come up over and over and over and over and over and over again. And so I have this structure that I know I'm operating in, that I know this really does matter because it's talked about 150 times in the Bible and all that kind of stuff.
More forest than trees.
Exactly. Yeah. Because the trees can get you lost.
Get splinters.
I love the metaphorical stuff going on right now. Absolutely. I mean, but it helped me a lot because I was in an environment. I said I was charismatic. I was at a charismatic university, and so there was a lot of splinters flying around there with do this. I was told I need to speak in tongues. I was told I need to do this and that the other thing. So I had to back up and go, wait a minute. Okay. And, Paul talks about these big block things a lot. So I'm going to just try to get my head around that and kind of establish my life on the big block things. And it's who Christ is, what he did, and what we're to do in response in kind of a basic ways that helped kind of sort it all out. Not that the small things don't matter. It just kind of puts them in perspective a little bit.
So now we're getting into canon. And it's going to open up a whole new can of worms.
All
and
right.
I want to save that for our next conversation. But just bring in this idea that Jordan Hall had talked about when I proposed that a conversation of his felt canonical, the way that I meant the word canonical, meaning sort of like it represented a level of conversation that was accurate to maybe a lot of other sorts of conversations. It was a theme, maybe as sort of you described that. And he felt, as I said that it was very non-canonical. And his reframing of canonical had more to do with something sort of like flowing vertically without error, without falsehood, that it was maybe more spirit-filled. Yeah. And so he also used the example of the pulpit, and that if you're speaking from the pulpit, you're speaking from authority, and that has a greater likelihood of being canonical. So I wonder how that lands for you as someone who's done thousands of sermons.
Right. Yeah, well, and the technical meaning is measure. It's like the thing that you measure against. To make sure that you have a straight line here. And so if you care about and believe in, I have very, very high view of the inspiration of the Bible, and so I want to accurately reflect what I believe it was truly saying to the people that originally, from the person that originally wrote it to the people that originally heard it, and get it as close as I can. And my goal is to be a contextualizer into the modern world and apply that.
This is what it meant for them. Most likely meant for them. This is what it might mean for us.
I want to hear the voice that they would hear it first, and then go over and kind of like you were talking about, be that bridge personality and say, okay, this is what that means in a world that we don't have a lot of those, those preloaded understandings. We don't have the same habitual imagery. In C.S. Lewis's words, he said, habitual imagery we all have that, but they had a very different habitual imagery than we do. But that you can translate over. And that's why you want to find the essence of what they're really was.
Essence.
Essence? Yeah, there you go. But it is. It's very important. And that's what the creeds were and everything to try to compress down into, because they weren't able to take the canon home with them. They had to repeat and use creeds and recite things and kind of get it in their head. Okay, one of my favorite verses in all the Bible is 1 Corinthians 15, where he says, I'm going to repeat what I told you. And he sums it up, Christ died for sins according to the scriptures and that kind of stuff. And he rose again. And it kind of just sums it all up. Well, I look at that summary and go, okay, I may not know a lot, but I'm standing on this summary right here. And that's going to establish my thinking as I kind of, sometimes I get a little wobbly, in other, little other areas that, whether.
That is solid ground for you to stand on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I still think it's a stumbling block for me.
Okay.
Which is why I think it's going to be fun to get into with you, because I do trust you, and I know that you'll be an honest, broker, as we kind of grapple together on this. And I suspect that there are others, sort of like me, who've deconstructed down similar, paths and may also have that as a stumbling block. And
absolutely,
this whole estuary thing. I'm starting to see it too. I can see the tables. I can see the tables.
That's right. You have the tables. We have got the tables. I didn't have to get those buildings at all. I could have just come over to honeymoon.
All right. Well, I don't know when the next time it will be, but I'm looking forward to it, and I'm glad that we last minute decided to record this.
I'm glad we did too.
So
I'm all about it. It's great.
So now I'm gonna do something even weirder. I'm going to ask us to pray together, but I'm going to turn off the camera.
Fantastic.
Okay.
I think that'd be great.